I appreciate very much, and we appreciate very much that all of you are here. I want to extend this gratefulness for all of you who are here, for all of our colleagues at the TU Wien, because all that we will show you today is not only an effort of FemChem, not only an effort of the faculty, but an effort shared with many colleagues from the TU Wien and many units from the TU Wien, as my colleague will explain later. I want to give our special thanks to our vice rectors. He had the time to join us here. And we have also the great pleasure to have Sabine Koch, the head of University and Higher Education Planning, Federal Ministry for Women, Science and Research. We very much appreciate the fact that we can discuss here with you, with all of you. And of course, we appreciate very much the effort, the involvement of Marko Mihovilovic, the head of the dean of the faculty, and who has been very enthusiastic and strongly involved in the project. Good. So with this, I will guide you slowly through the agenda of the day. We will have a few presentations, maybe a couple of things that I should clarify now. I'm speaking English, but the event will be hybrid. So our idea was that we want to have an event that is as diverse as possible. So we will have the first presentations in English, but the roundtable discussion will be in German. And any of you can ask questions in German or in English at any time. Another thing that I should clarify is the time frame. It might sound a bit weird that we make an event between 12 and 3, but this was an effort also to try to do it as family-friendly as possible, so that the parents that are here have some time to work and at the same time can go and pick up their kids at the right time. So, as I said, there will be a sequence of presentations, and afterwards we will have a podium discussion. We're very grateful to have some great panelists here today, and also the moderation from Anna Wagner, who is the head of New Media, Die Presse, Audio, Video, Social Media, and Opinion. So with this, I don't talk anymore. I will give the word to my colleague, Anne, also from the FemChem, from the Diversity and Identity Group, and she has been involved in FemChem from the very beginning, so she will show you a little bit the pathway that the network has followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel, and I'm happy to continue and give you a bit of a background. Raquel said it already, FemChem is an initiative, no, not FemChem is an initiative, Parent is an initiative by FemChem, yes, so I start with FemChem. FemChem is the feminist network of the faculty. We are active since 2016, and since that, quite a number of students and staff shaped, developed, and run that project. We are organized in 4 teams, and the structure of these teams shows what we are focusing on. So we have communication, information, networking, competence enhancement, diversity and identity, but still all of us aim at our vision and our mission. Yeah? And with that, I will not read through it, but you see already that as a feminist network, FemChem addresses really structural inequality and not just sort of women's issues, yeah? So we want to go sort of for the basic equity and non-discriminating environment. So I have 2 messages why this slide is still on. One is that parenthood really affects everyone. It's not just a thing of mothers, it affects all genders, it affects all people. Because even if you don't have kids yourself, your neighbors, friends, team members, colleagues might have, and you interact with them. You feel how the situations for those change, and you have to adapt to these changes, and you will feel changes yourself. So although we speak about pregnancy, breastfeeding and impact on female careers, we have to keep in mind that parents are not just mothers, that various kinds of parenthood exist, and parenthood is part of the life of all of us. And this is what we did and what we do in Parent, is we are working on a culture that allows both parenthood and following a scientific career, regardless of gender. So this was sort of the first message I wanted to give with that slide. The next is connected to create connections, utilize synergies. To drive a project like we had it here, a lot of people are needed. And we really had to build and rely on the experience, knowledge, and the support of a lot of colleagues at TU. And I definitely want to mention some organizational units here. We really relied on the Gender Equality Office, HR developments, representatives of various special bodies and interest groups working on that topic, for instance, caregiving and also occupational medicine. So it's really something like working together, helping, understanding each other, and bringing all of us to the front. Second is, we need our external experts. We are active members in FemChem, but we are not expert in gender studies or consulting, So we really rely on that experts, and especially Marita Haas, you will have the presentation later on given by her, but we were also supported by a lot of other experts in that field, as we will show later on during the workshops or during the former projects. And the last then, also already mentioned by Raquel, is the commitment of our dean, who sometimes pushed us, sometimes we pushed him, but it's a good cooperation, I think, Okay, the background of the implementation project. It started in 2019 with a study about the situation of junior scientists at the faculty. All the results can be read in the internet, you can go through them. It was a cooperation with the gender competence and our dean. And here I should mention Herbert Danninger also, because this was before Marko was dean at our university, but he carried everything on. Why did we do that study? The starting point was a workshop by the gender competence, where we learned about the gender asymmetries in science. And there, the idea started to put that global picture into our environment, to see how the situation is at the faculty, to break it down. And this was a really great thing, because it gave us the chance to have numbers, figures about our environment, to have statements out of colleagues or from colleagues. And now there was no time for excuses any longer. We saw that the situation as we have it here is just as it is everywhere, not better, also not worse, but just the big picture, but no more excuses. There was just the chance to go ahead and to improve the situation. And I think this really brought us a step further. Just to put one central finding here, we could see that women want to stay in science, but they felt a bit, or they feel a bit unsure whether this career is compatible with a family. So what was to do then? We tried to get a closer picture how parenthood impacts scientific careers. And with those sort of results we got there, it was really possible then to go into the implementation process. Because what were the findings? There was the impact. Women had the possibility, or men had the possibility to decide on care responsibilities, but women were much more pushed into that topic. Lab work is a decisive factor for the interruptions in the careers. And what we saw there as well is that the support women get, or how they feel, how they get it, really relies a lot on the individual supervisors and in the situation, how they really manage to go through this phase of their career. Okay, so how to move on? We know what to do then, or where to work on, and we started the parent implementation project, which ran during the last 10 months, a little less than a year. And there was the objective to assist in the transformation of the faculty. So it was really starting changes, or at least see how the changes really could be implemented and could be installed. So it was a how to work on the topics of changing infrastructure, changing structures, preparing leaders. Thinking about how to set up infrastructure in a more friendly way. It could be labs, it could also be office space, meeting rooms. Thinking about how to build processes and structures. This is first thinking what really are the implications for daily work in the research groups, but also how we can get those structures which are already established and which are there closer to the people, yeah? And perhaps how to shape them, influence them a bit. Once again, it's not something like inventing everything new, yeah? It's to creating synergies, to make them accessible, and to go ahead, yeah? Let's put it that way. And then the last thing, how to prepare leaders. It's a crucial position they have, but it's not something here like putting another task on top, yeah? But to create the structures that they really can shape a family-friendly environment. Okay, so how did we do that then during the last project phase? Or during the last project in that phase of projects? We had some dedicated activities and events, and then we had a constant reflection, meetings in the core group, and although in a broader context, thinking about the dedicated events, looking at best practice examples. We had the visit of the pregnancy lab of the Vienna Biocenter. We had the workshops with leaders. Yeah, a lot of you attended here, and I'm happy to have Nina here also, yeah, who set up and held the workshops. I mentioned the regular meetings already to bring us to the front. And then we had also the chance to use a master thesis conducted at the University of Vienna in the STS master program. And this gave us the chance to deepen our perspective and to learn more about the work realities of researchers. And again, some of you were contacted for interviews to go into that thesis. Before we switch to the presentation given by Anna Maria, and this presentation will be given online because she's currently on a research stay in Denmark, I want to sort of follow up this intro. This parent initiative, yeah, is not just something about getting numbers and figures. It really is something about transforming, starting to get that change, to think about careers, caregiving, leadership in science, and it's not over. It's just a step here in between, and it's going on. Thank you.
Hello, I think that was my cue. Thank you already for the introduction, Anne. Just a little bit about me. So I'm part of FemChem on the one hand, and I'm a PhD candidate here at the faculty at the department, at the Institute of Chemical, Environmental, and Bioscience Engineering. But I'm also an STS student. I'm doing a master thesis in STS for this master program from TU Wien. And I kind of have this role in between the two worlds. And now I wanted to show you what my master thesis in collaboration with the parent implementation project is about. And it is about making a living in a lab, figuratively and literally. So on the one hand, being pregnant while being a researcher. On the other hand, making a living and working in a lab. And we're talking about gender co-constructions of realities in chemistry research. Just for short, what STS is about. It is a small little subfield of sociology, and it deals with science, technology, and society in a myriad of ways. So it is an interdisciplinary field that explores how science and technology are shaped and shape or co-construct each other with human societies, with different cultures, politics, with different values, policies also. And thereby it looks how scientific knowledge is created, how it is developed, what kind of consequences that has, and how technical, the same with technological systems. That also includes working realities in science and of researchers. And it is a master program at Universität Wien. And yeah, this is what my master thesis is in. To get a little bit more into what the thesis is about. So the focus of research is here at the Faculty of Technical Chemistry at the TU Wien. And the master thesis looks a bit closer into the gendered organization and the career pathways in chemistry research at the faculty. So the question is, how are the working realities of pregnant, breastfeeding, and caregiving women scientists co-constructed at the Faculty of Technical Chemistry? Why do we even look at this? So a little bit of a background. We still have a very persistent gender gap. So the Sheet Figures 2021 study by the European Commission showed that women earn 50% of all PhDs, but they only hold 25% of all senior academic positions. That is partly due to a phenomenon that we call the leaky pipeline that was a little bit addressed also, or was addressed in the studies that Femkin prior did. And we can see that women exit all kind of STEM fields gradually, on the one hand, due to different systemic barriers across the education and different career stages. So we see dropouts of women along the whole educational chain and the whole career stages. This is due to some expectations and notions of gendered academic excellence. We, in modern science and academia, we have certain criteria, certain metrics that we measure excellence with. Some of them are criteria like productivity, like mobility. And those things often favor male-dominated career trajectories, and do not really include aspects of caregiving and family values. We have organizational and institutional influence that extends way beyond just the faculty or the university, but internationally, we have some forms of institutionalized culture, mentorship, and leadership that typically also shape gendered career outcomes. And in chemistry, we have this very, very specific and special situation of the lab, the research site as is the lab. And of course, we have lab restrictions during pregnancy by the Austrian labor law, which is very important, which is very, very important to guarantee the health and safety of the pregnant person and the fetus as well. But this also unintentionally disadvantages women in publication-driven academia, because you're simply not allowed to go to your research field, to your research site. And the SDS perspective here is a bit of a special perspective. They say that science as a working field, so not science as a discipline, but science as a working field, is nothing that is gender neutral. We can see that gender norms shape the knowledge production and the different career structures as well as career pathways. And what we see from the background, that we might need some cultural, institutional reforms to have more gender equity, especially in STEM disciplines. So at first we looked a little bit about on the pregnancies at the faculty in the last few years. And we saw that there were 14 pregnancies in total. And an average parental leave, we had about 8 months. 2 of the women left TU after pregnancy, but we do not know if they still continued to do research, if they work elsewhere in a research institution at another university. So we can't really say that they left academia or they left science, but they left the TU Wien. After the pregnancy, after the parental leave, 85% is the average level of employment, meaning we have a bit over 32 hours a week that women typically work after parental leave. And we do not have any women that are employed under 75% after parental leave. Coming from the numbers that we have at the university, I'm more into the hypothesis, what the whole master thesis is about. And so we look into social material assemblages. So the social and the material aspects that shape the working realities of pregnant breastfeeding and caregiving scientists. And we have social materialities of the laws, we have the laboratories, and we have the leaders. And they influence these working realities through different aspects, through the organization of labs and lab work. So how the work is materially assembled, what kind of chemicals are used, what kind of apparatus and methods are used, how are the lab work is organized with colleagues, with students. We also see that how labor laws are there and how they are implemented by occupational health and the labor inspectorate. And then we have the whole role of the professors, project group leaders, principal investigators, supervisors, and how they organize the lab work, and the working reality. Just a little bit of, for those of you who are really into sociology, the theories that we used, or that I used for the master thesis, is on the one hand, the epistemic living spaces, which directly comes out of STS, from two Viennese researchers, Max Feld and Ulrike Fochler. And then I also used the gendered organization social materialities by Joan Acker. If you're more interested in that, you can find the literature at the end of the presentation, and you can read a little bit more into this. So what are the methods? There were qualitative semi-structured interviews that I conducted with currently a lately pregnant researchers. There was a distribution in the researchers. So we had PhDs, project assistants, we had university assistants, senior scientists, professors. We also conducted interviews with leaders. So also on different positions within the faculty, institute, group, area leaders, and also with occupational health, which we call the AMD, Arbeitsmedizinischer Dienst, to see how those people, to get their experiences and get their ideas. The whole interviews then were recorded and transcribed in a verbatim manner and coded and analyzed with the software called Atlas TI. And now I want to go a little bit more into the results, which I think is really the interesting part of this. And I want to do a little disclaimer. STS is a very critiquing field. So STS focuses a lot on the things that can be improved. Within all the interviews, there were a lot of positive aspects, and you can see that the faculty and the TU Wien is really good in taking care of their researchers and taking care of their parents. Simply that a project like this exists also means how focus is put on being a family-friendly institution. So I want to say that first, because a lot of the things that I'm going to mention now are going to be critiques. And this is because STS is a very critiquing field. I split the results into the three different parts. So we have the researchers, the leaders, and occupational health and safety. And generally, pregnant researchers, they do feel supported, and especially the flexibility that the TU Wien or the faculty allows for is really, really appreciated. On the other hand, something that might not be super new and super surprising is that pregnancy does affect research outputs. So on the one hand, we have maybe fatigues, we have medical conditions, health issues, but on the other hand, we just have doctor's appointments and maybe also other things that you have in mind if you are to become a parent that you have to think of, and that might take your head a bit of your research focus. Yeah, researchers do feel supported in all of their medical appointments and all their issues by the TU Wien and by the flexibility of TU Wien. But still, there is some underlying institutional societal acceptance of pregnancy in science or kids and parents in science. So academia is not, especially natural sciences or chemistry, is not necessarily a space where you would bring your kids. It is not necessarily something that is connected with parenthood. If you think about it, if you think about a researcher, you do not necessarily think about being a mother and having kids around. So there's this lack of visibility of parents in pregnancy in visible academic spaces. And a lot of the times we have temporary contracts. And if a temporary contract might end, that can lead to some women being pushed in a more maternal role, while on the other hand, fathers might have a more permanent job elsewhere, not in academia. So by chance, your contract is ending, and so you might be pushed being a housemaker rather than being a scientist because you have this job security on the other side of the couple. If we look a little bit more into leaders, we see that they're generally very supportive of all their employees and of all their researchers. But nevertheless, especially if you have a project where a person is assigned to a certain task or a certain working part of the project, it is a project disruption. And those project disruptions are often linked to career disruptions of the researcher, the pregnant researcher themselves, but also to the leaders sometimes. If you have people that are connected to certain deliverables, it's going to be hard if this person is on maternal leave. Sometimes leaders in senior roles, they have not taken parental leave or only short parental leave themselves. And if we think about replacing only not permanently, but only for the short period, replacing someone by a Karenzvertretung, the viability is really lacking. So sometimes we do not have the time to find someone that is really specialized in the same manner that this other person was. Sometimes we don't have the time or the funding to have the training for those Karenzvertretungen. And also we have to basically kick this person out sometimes again after the original researcher comes back because it's only a Karenzvertretung. So we also have to deal with the ethics of a Karenzvertretung. And finally, a big point about the whole manner of projects and parental leaves is that timelines sometimes clash or often clash. And then we have an individual career risk on both sides. So we have the leaders and the researchers that have career risk that is enforced by pregnancy. On the other hand, when we go to occupational health and safety, we know that there are no formal education programs in place. So if we talk about occupational health services, if you talk about becoming a doctor, studying medicine, there is no research on chemical and physical risks during pregnancy when it comes to lab work, when it comes to certain substances. There are no clear guidelines, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is safe, what is not safe, also because it's really hard to tell. Also, there's no research on that because you can't research on a fetus or a pregnant body in an ethical manner. So we have this avoid all just in case aspect, which is of course very important for everybody to stay safe and healthy and to ensure that people can have safe pregnancies. But in another way, that means that you cannot access your lab. To really assess what is dangerous and what is not dangerous to a researcher and to a fetus, to pregnant researchers and to a fetus, means that we need a lot of interdisciplinary expertise. So we need chemists, we need doctors, we also need lawyers, because if something happens, who is responsible? And you need very diverse teams working together to actually assess this notion of danger. And as a third thing, that comes into play, that is that we have rapidly changing labs in academia at the technical chemistry, because we have project setup, we have changing equipment, we have changing chemicals that are changed by this rapidly changing products, that are changed by the short pacedness of upfront research. Because if you do really innovative research, you also have to stay on track with what is important. So that changes a lot. If you look at the coding of the interviews that I did, you could single out a few what we call actors. Those actors can be social actors, like actual people, groups of people, or also material objects that influence the working reality of a pregnant research that we see in the middle here. And all the errors have been deducted from the interviews, from the coding of the interviews. And the size of the error, so the thickness of it, represents how often the code came up in the coding. And there's a lot of different networks, a lot of things influencing each other. Of course, we are all connected in our working realities with our colleagues, with our leaders. We are connected with the law. We can see that TU Wien as an institution, and the faculty is also part of TU Wien, because we can see that a lot of leaders and researchers do not really distinguish between faculty or the TU Wien as a whole. So here it is included as TU Wien, which also means the faculty. And we can see that they have a lot of influence on the pregnant researcher and the labs. But also another disclaimer, we're talking about perceived influence. So this is no quantitative measure of how actual influence works like, but this is perceived influence of how the interview participants perceive the influence of those different actors. And one thing that I really want to stress out, and that everybody feels that they're really influenced by, is just the way that modern science is organized. So we can see that modern science, on the one hand, of course, influences leaders, influences the TU Wien by metrics. So we're talking productivity, we're talking university rankings, we're talking money, we're talking funding. So how science itself is organized has really a big impact on leaders, on the TU Wien, also on how labs are organized. As I said before, substances changing, methods changing. Sometimes you don't even know what you work with because you work in modern science. That has a big influence on how a lab looks like. But we can also see how modern science impacts health, especially the mental health of researchers, and how this health then influences, for example, the TU Wien, the faculty or leaders, by people dropping out of science, by people having to take breaks. We can also see that colleagues and leaders and pregnant researchers are very tightly intertwined because science is a big team effort. So it's really hard to single out specific actors and specific fields, specific teams that have the most influence. But what is also really good, and what we can also see in this very diverse diagram of all the errors and thicknesses, that there are a lot of different ways on how to also make a pregnant researcher's working place, a caregiving researcher's working place, better. So there are a lot of diverse measures, and there's no one fits all approach. There's no one error that we can change or one error that we can make bigger, thinner, that we can influence, that will have the biggest impact. It's a diverse network of measures. And this is what we can also really see later on in Marita Haas' presentation, where we have a myriad of different recommendations to actually make this working place of a pregnant researcher better. So the biggest part with modern science is also the metrics and how we assess academic excellence, how we do that in an international field, because it is not like we just work at TU Wien and in Austria and we work in our nice little bubble, but we do have to compete. We have competition with other universities, with other researchers in an international context. So those measures and metrics is really something that are at the core when it comes to the working place of a pregnancy researcher. I want to come to a conclusion because we could talk about this a lot longer. But the output drivenness of academia is something that also marginalizes caregivers and makes it a lot harder for pregnant, breastfeeding, caring researchers to succeed in their careers. They face structural barriers, they face cultural barriers, and they face material obstacles. And what I wanted to say with pregnancy isn't the problem, science inflexibility is something that is a bit provocative. Pregnancy, people get pregnant. We need people to get pregnant. We need, as a society, we need kids. We need to live on. And we also need science to be a working place that makes this possible. We want to have equitable living and researching spaces. And we want to have science as a working place that is adaptive and not exclusive to some genders. So we really want to see a little bit of institutional reform, which we also see with this project. And it's really something that is supporting diverse life and working trajectories in academia. This is my part for now. I think there will be some time for questions that can be in German or English in any way. I might close the presentation so you can actually see me. Am I right, Anna? Was that the plan?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ana Maria. Maybe close the presentation. Thanks. Thank you. So we have a couple of minutes in case you have any question for Ana Maria or about the work of Ana Maria. If anyone has some pressing question, otherwise, okay. Otherwise we can maybe move on. Thank you very much, Ana Maria. And
thank you.
I just maybe need to tell you that the thesis of Ana Maria is still not finished, although she made good progress, as you can see. But whenever it's finished, it will be linked into the webpage where we will have the whole parent study. So you will have access to all of this information in the future once she finishes the master thesis report. Thanks, Ana Maria.
Thank you.
So I would like to make a small stop here, not stop in the event, but make a small stop to kind of reflect, because I don't know if all of you got what this is about, in the sense that the parent implementation is a continuation of a project that has been going on for many years, right, now. And as you saw, we call it project, which we had a small discussion on whether it should be a project or not. It is a compendium of activities. If you see, we were trying to make our faculty a more family-friendly environment. We were trying to motivate our young female students to pursue a scientific career, even though they might think this is not possible. It's not possible to be a mother and make a scientific career. And I must say here, if you allow me, I still have female students who tell me, how did you do it to have 2 kids and be a professor at the university? And I get a bit emotional even when I think about it. So with this, I want to say it was a lot of activities involved in this. It was not a project as itself, but we kind of extracted information from Ana Maria's thesis, from our visit to the pregnancy lab, from the workshops with Nina, from our meetings with our colleagues at the TU Wien. And of course, you can imagine, in FemChem, we belong to the chemistry faculty. We are chemists or engineers. We are not really experts in this. And we had the great honor to have a wonderful expert leading us through the whole process. That was Marita Haas. She worked with us the whole time. She was, I must say, the project leader at many times. And the idea was that we would work together. We would find this reality together, getting different pieces of information. And her task was not easy. She had to put on a list of recommendations and tell us, as a gender expert and organizational advisor, this is what I would suggest that you should do to make the faculty a more family-friendly environment. So this is what we will hear now, but before that, I want to thank Marita for the great job that she did in that sense.
Thanks a lot. I am happy to be here, and I have the honor to present the recommendations that we developed along the project, along the time that we've been working together. For those who don't know me, I'm a former researcher of the TU Wien. I worked at the Faculty of Management Science. I graduated and did my PhD at the University of Vienna, but I spent some years in doing research on gender organization and inequality. And in 2018, I think, I started my own business. And I'm now working with organizations, with startups, with university organizations, and I support them in developing fair structures, collaborative structures, equal structures. And like you already said, it was in our collaboration, it was more about, it was more designed like a management sparring or sparring with the project group. So how can we really improve the situation at the faculty? And from my point of view, I'm quite pragmatic. So I'm trying to find solutions that really fit to the organization and to the people working there. And of course, I have a scientific mindset, which helps me to focus on structural aspects. So conclusions and recommendations that really help the organization to grow, not the individuals, but the organization. Yeah, Anna-Maria just said science must adopt. So what we know is that, I think I can make a full screen here. No, this was not the right, here. Yeah. Working with a MacBook makes it difficult to switch to other laptops, but I think now we managed. I think a lot of things that I wanted to include in my presentation have already been said, so about how we work together, about science as a field that still produces a gender gap, and about the special situation at a faculty where most of the people are working in labs, because as soon as you get pregnant, you have to step out of these labs. And this really means that you have to find a workaround or solutions, how to continue your research, how to be supported by your team. And it also means that you might probably not be able to finish some experiments or hand them over to a colleague. And also for the scientific group, it means to reorganize. So this is kind of the basic idea that parenthood has still an impact on female careers, and our recommendations try to focus on how to avoid a gender gap and a gender publication gap, but also how to improve it. So as Anne already said, we focused on 3 pillars: on infrastructure, on staff, and also on leadership and mindset. I will not repeat that. You will see it in the final recommendations. And we jointly, I have to say something about organizational characteristics. Yes, so looking at the Faculty of Chemistry, we found out that there are some specifics that might not be the same in other organizations. So when Anna-Maria talked about the scientific system and about how science is constructed, how it is related to excellence, to the excellence discourse, how it is done in a specific technical field, there are some things that are specific here at the faculty, and those need to be addressed in order to improve. So first of all, we realized that there is quite a fragmented structure of responsibility when it comes to parenthood. This means that at the moment when, for example, a woman gets pregnant, it is not completely clear how to get a specific support. Of course, there is information of the HR department, and of course, there is her group leader and supervisor to guide her along the process, but there is no clear and established practice how to really guide the pregnant women through the process, how to design the work in the research group, no established practice how to recruit, for example, substitutes, how to build a pool, how to develop senior scientists, how to replace the single person. So this is somehow done in a very specific and individual way every time a woman gets pregnant. Which does generally not mean that this is done in a bad way. It's just a non-efficient and not very structured process. There is also reduced knowledge about how to proceed as a group leader, because most of the information that is given to pregnant women and parents is given to the parent themselves, but not to the group leader as the person who is responsible for the career development of that person. And what is more, and what I also would like to stress, is that career breaks at the faculty are still considered as incompatible with academic excellence. This is mostly about time. So like we said before, pregnancy and also parenthood is not considered as a common part of a female career or as a career in academia. And this also leads to those very various and different experiences that women have. But let me come to the conclusions and to the recommendations. What you can see here is a list of recommendations that we developed jointly and in interaction with the core team and also the dean of the faculty. They are on different levels, and some of them have a short-term character, some of them have a long-term character. When we decided for the presentation here, we chose the most relevant recommendations that I will now present in more detail. And the first recommendation for the faculty is to build a single point of contact directly here at the faculty, which should be something like a technical scientific information hub for supervisors. So this should be like the single point of contact hub should be a unit which coordinates all the different information and supports with a structured information process for the supervisors. It should also support the supervisors in developing the right strategy for pregnant researchers, guiding them, supporting the group leaders, and expand. So our idea was that it really expands the parental leave roadmap with some concise information for the supervisor. So we talked a lot about the role of leaders in our project team, and we are very well aware that as a research group leader, you have a lot of work to do concerning your own research, coordinating the research of your group. Mostly funded by third-party projects, you will need to do a lot of work in administration, managing reports, things like that. So whenever something unexpected addresses your group, then you might need some more guidance than just like starting from scratch. So the idea is to have the single point of contact unit that really guides you through the process, so you will just have to contact one person or one unit that then supports you. On a long-term basis, we also developed some ideas how this single point of contact unit could help the faculty, and our idea is that especially at this unit, there is a database growing on materials, on tools, on working processes, so that the advisory unit is becoming more competent over the years. This is something that we learned from the visit at the Vienna Biotech Center, where definitely they built up a database and guidelines along a time period of, I think, 10 years, and where we learned that, of course, every situation is specific, but along the way, you can really build up upon those single processes. our recommendation is also that some concept for safe alternative workplaces can be developed in such a unit, because there the technical assistance, also the knowledge of arbeitsmedizinischer Dienst, that information should just come together so that you can really rely on a career development that is based on scientific knowledge. I could say a lot more about that, but yeah, this would be our first recommendation, to really have the single point of contact at the faculty. The second and third recommendation that I would like to present are about resources, because when we talk about the fact that a scientific career has an interruption, then we have to talk about, okay, how to replace times of absence, how to support the team if one of the people is not there, and this can only be done by financial and or personal resources. So our recommendation is to provide easy accessible financial resources to support individual career continuity in case of pregnancy and parental leave. So sometimes the contracts of researchers are of course linked to the projects they are in, and sometimes you're just part of the project and the project continues, and if you have some parental leave when you come back, maybe the project is finished or someone else had to take over your experiments in order to fulfill project deadlines and things like that. This of course does not fit if it's just an individual project, but if it's a group project, then this could be the case. So coming back and following up on your individual path of research, you might need some new research design, you might need some new experiments, things like that. And so an easy accessible pool of financial means should support that. We also included in that recommendation to establish and implement a kind of a transparent application and review process, so that you, as the people of the faculty, learn about that process. For example, every year you can see who applied, how much fund was given to the person and also to the research team, and it could be accessed, evaluated, monitored, so that every person who needs such individual support can make use of it to equal extent. And this goes also hand in hand with the idea to have additional resources in the research groups. Our recommendation is establishing a pool of technical assistants, could be lab assistants, senior scientists, student assistants, to take over experimental work during periods of absence. So the idea is that the one who is leading a project, doing the research, can focus on, for example, theoretical work, data analysis, but also publications and leading the project, so being the one who is responsible for the project. But some assistant could take over parts of the research. You can see here that we put in the second paragraph that this pool should provide support during pregnancy, breastfeeding, maternity leave, parental leave for both mothers and fathers, as well as during other challenging times of family and care situations. So it's just, I'm presenting a lot of recommendations that align with the situation of pregnancy, but it's not only about pregnancy, it's also about difficult times in families that family time or family care time is often unstructured, and we cannot even expect how it unfolds in a specific situation with specific kids or specific family members. So such research group support should support the individual researcher, but also the group, that you have somebody to replace if challenging family times are existing. We recommend to start that with pilot projects, because of course you cannot build a pool with scientists, technical scientists, specific scientists for the whole faculty, but you can start in 2 or 3 teams and learn and let this pool of assistants grow. And the last recommendation I would like to present here is the support for supervisors, because as we heard several times, we know that for supervisors, group leaders, is especially hard to get all the information from one single point of contact. So it's related to the first recommendation. But we also saw that every supervisor or leader leads the group a little bit differently. So of course, this is about personal leadership styles, but our recommendation is to develop something like joint leadership guidelines aligned with the endeavors and also the vision of the TU Wien and the faculty, which you can see here in the room because we put them there. That allows flexibility in your leadership style, of course, but on the other hand also aligns you with a mindset of equal career advancement and supports you in giving the same opportunities to all researchers with a particular focus on supporting women in order to close that gender gap. We also recommend to embed responsibility for work-life compatibility and family inclusiveness into leadership performance criteria, because this is the way how you can develop those things. And we recommend to really foster a collaborative and supportive team culture and facilitate regular meetings and networking and peer exchange among supervisors. We, in our list of recommendations, you will find something like leadership labs, so support in being a good leader in a scientific organization where leadership, in comparison to leadership in organizations that are not scientific driven, you have generally not that many resources to support leaders. So we recommend to do that and promote an open dialogue on active family friendliness and inclusive leadership practices. So from the last point, you can easily see that this would help to work on a culture that really allows parenthood and scientific career, that really allows for a more inclusive approach. You can also see from our recommendations, we did not focus on female mentoring or female empowerment, because these are rather outdated measures that do not really focus on the core of the problem. So when we talk about how to close the gender gap in science, we will have to talk about how to improve the conditions, how to improve the conditions on a very daily basis, looking at experiments, publications, working together. And yeah, we have to improve the conditions for both male and female researchers. So let me sum up with the following statement. The Parent Initiative is about transforming how we think about careers, care, and leadership in science. And I will therefore hand over to Marko as a central decision maker and as one of the main driving forces for gender equality at the faculty. Thank you.
I said that before, but I should say again, I think all of us, we are very grateful that you have supported us during this project, and not only financially, which is important, but also really on the daily activities that we were doing, coming with us to the pregnancy labs, taking part in the workshops. So I would say you have been a very active part, and now it's on your hand to make the decisions on how the future will look like.
Not putting any pressure on my shoulders, right? Well, thank you very much so far, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. I think we reached a really important point in time of many of the activities that we have started, unfolded, and actually put to a certain milestone in this FemChem-driven activities. So from my end, many thanks to all the previous presentations. I think it was really important to setting the stage. And this initiative by FemChem has evolved tremendously, I would say, and you could see that since we first initiated a study to identify systemic problems and hurdles for female scientists in our faculty several years ago. We already heard a little bit about the historic context, but I would like to also present my point of view, how I observed the developments in the last couple of years, and also to give you the impression I got based for my next steps for the implementation. It's not just my next steps, it's still a team effort and a joint endeavor, because we all have to participate, getting that on the ground finally, and not just talking about prospective solutions, but doing them at this point in time. So I think it has been mentioned already, but I really would like to emphasize that FemChem represents the first female network here at TU Wien, and has emerged actually into an active role model. Essentially all the other faculties now have activities like that, and they all work very similar based on the blueprint of FemChem. So congratulations for that. And it has already also been mentioned that this is a mutual pushing exercise, right? And I know that at the beginning, when I got appointed as a dean in 2020, I pushed very hard on getting action going. I'm aware of that, yeah. You pushed me later on in financing the whole thing, which is fair enough. But I think at that point in time, to my understanding, there was a significant change in the approach here, because before that, FemChem understood itself as a network to connect, to raise awareness. But at that time, it was actually ripe to take the next step from general support to really doing specific action, to doing specific activities. And I'm very happy that you picked up the ball, because I know I pushed hard, and I would like to very explicitly express my thankfulness that it is you guys who not just followed the advice, but really took up the stuff and moved way beyond to what we had initially planned. So thank you very much for that. Now, for the important result for me to trigger also my engagement in this program, this was the result of the first study. And to my understanding, this was important to get a clearer picture of the situation and of prospective bottlenecks in the career development of female scientists here in the faculty. We know that in all the different committees, Senate and so, we talk about female support plan development, how that unfolds. To me, very often, this is a little bit of a data graveyard. And the challenge is to extract information, what you can do next with that. And for me, the first parent study was a very important, not data graveyard, but gave a very important aspect to really have a databasis to start planning next steps, or to more specifically look into directions where we still are not optimal. And this is, in science, I think, a very natural thing. If everything would be optimized already, there's no need for science. So I think and as scientists, we usually don't just look there where the easy feats are, but we look at the really hardcore problems. And for me, the first study was a major aspect that we could identify where to closer take a look in order to hopefully make a better impact. It also earned us a video conference. At that time, it was still COVID times, with Federal Minister Raab to exchange our experiences. And I think this was also a major motivation for the team involved to not just stop there and say, okay, we've done something, checkpoint, but we really want to go on. So for me, the outcome was to really focus on the situation of pregnant scientists, because this has a major impact on the development of female scientist careers. So this was the trigger and the starting point for the follow-up study, the parent study you heard today, and in several stages, and where the particular details were acquired to better understand the situation of and the bottlenecks here in the Faculty of Technical Chemistry at TU Wien, but also to obtain at least a glimpse of ideas how to do it better, to have best practices from other institutions, to collect also impressions from our incoming female scientists from their home-based institutions, and maybe take learnings there, or take learnings what did not work there and not going in the wrong direction. And for me, a really important eye-opener, and I'm very happy that I was part of that, was the visit at Vienna Biocenter. So the bottom line for me is pregnancy, and I think you clearly heard that today, still is a potential career breaking point for female scientists in the worst case. And it is definitely some sort of an indention. In German, I always use the word Delle in the career development. And the big question is, how can we smoothen out this indention and maybe even convert it into something that in generally pushes our whole institution here. So we want to definitely keep female scientists on their career track, and in particular also in view of the fantastic developments that the faculty did in the last, let's say, decade or so. And I compare that to soccer. This is not just a male-driven arena anymore when we look at the successes of our female soccer team. I'm very often comparing that to the Champions League. I mean, let's face it, in the last 10 years, this faculty emerged from the smallest faculty of the house to one of the big players with among the top 3 third-party funding faculties, being present in 3 clusters of excellence, having several ERC grantees in-house, running several CD labs. So with respect to scientific excellence, I think we really made a major leap forward when we compared that, for example, last November, looking back at 20 years of development of the faculty. So far for the historic background. Why is today so important, and in particular to me? Today, for me, is a clear call to action. We have collected a lot of data. We have done our exercises in the last 10 months. We have analyzed, we have acquired data, we have analyzed situations. We have an action plan here. And now it's the decisive point in deciding what can we do on different time levels? What can we do investing different amounts of existing or not existing budgetary contributions? How can we really make that into a massive game changer, similar to what we achieved in scientific excellence? So for me, this is a clear action, call to action, starting an excellence initiative 2.0, now focusing on the individual, focusing on where we lose talent, where we do not exploit potential among our co-workers, and in particular, of course, focusing on the situation of parenthood and of pregnancy. So in this time, we should put the individual in the focus, not just only the faculty, but definitely also benefit as a faculty from that. Let me resonate a few points from the presentations that were already done, and what I intend to bring on track in the coming years. And actually, there is a very good and tempting window of opportunity, because we are currently, of course, negotiating the next 3-year budget, the Zielvereinbarungen. So I'm also looking a little bit at Ute Koch here and addressing a few things in this direction, maybe to resonate to other levels. So I have presented part of this initiative already in a retreat a 1.5 weeks ago with the rectorate, and I got some favorable signs here, but I think it's really important now to come up with a detailed plan. I see the opportunities at different levels of complexity, but also at different price tags. Let me put it this way. And I would also like to emphasize that TU Wien indeed is offering a plethora of activities already. And I find it remarkable to always find new support actions. But on the other hand, we are facing a very classical TU Wien dilemma as well. Nobody knows everything. Sometimes it's difficult to get the information. And in particular, it became very evident to me that in the case of emergency, pregnancy can be interpreted in such a way. All levels directly involved are simply overwhelmed with the situation. This is, in a nutshell, my understanding of what has been presented in a very, very elegant way on the slides before. So additional activities to support in this situation are definitely required to improve the whole situation, I would say. And everything is prepared there, but it's a little bit like cooking, right? I mean, you have all the ingredients, but now you have to really bring it together, bring it in context, in the right ratio, in the right order of timing, right order of events, and make up a good dish. I love to cook. Maybe some of you know that. So what I understand as a rather quick win is the establishment of this so-called single point of contact, particularly at faculty level. Because, of course, we have HR, but the way to go there, literally, we are a rather remote campus, yeah? But the way to go there can be very far. on all different facets here. My idea of this single point of contact, and I take a picture, so probably a lot of you know that I'm thinking very often in pictures. For me, this is like the role of a dispatcher. Yeah? So a person who knows how to put certain things in the proper channels in order to efficiently drive the things forward. So it's not that we take over tasks here at the faculty level that actually are done and can be done and should be done with HR, but we want to make sure that in the most efficient way, the connections between the about to become mother, supervisor, and other support action will be ensured. This only requires some rearrangements in our organizational structure and a good alignment with the central units and maybe some additional reshuffling of the tasks, maybe some minor additional personnel action. Now for the more expensive part. One of the more expensive proposals, I would really like to develop the concrete implementation plan towards the mentioned personnel pool to support young female scientists, especially in view of the experimental dimension that we are facing here in chemistry as probably a very particular aspect. I think this can be achieved in multiple stages, and I'm now looking again at Ute Koch because we are already talking about and negotiating a larger initiative together with TU Berlin, yeah, and maybe some other activities. So I really do hope that this will produce maybe an add-on to what we have planned, and maybe to start with a first initiative that can be expanded in later stages. This would be, to my understanding, a very strong signal to really get visible measure on the ground here with respect to immediately alleviating and improving the situation. Because a major difference I and we see vis-a-vis our visit at Vienna Biocenter is the sheer breadth of research activities that we are doing here in technical chemistry. This goes from biochemistry, like at Biocenter, pipetting small dimensions, all the way going to pilot plant facilities, handling multiple hundred liters of problematic chemicals and problematic reagents, going to nuclear chemistry, working at the reactor, and so on and so forth. So I think the one-size-fits-all will not really help here. We still have to address situations in a highly individualized way, but we need a better roadmap to handle that, and we need additional measures. I think these measures will very clearly reduce the impact of pregnancy, in particular in context with the experimental situation we have at the chemistry faculty. And everything there will contribute substantially to smoothing out the dent that we may see in the career development. What I also would think as very appropriate based on the data we have collected, and this was not specifically introduced so far in detail, is to extend the now already possible 3-month extensions in contracts based on a pregnancy leave, maybe doubling that, because what we see is, or at least according to the data that was conveyed to me, we see that there is a strong trend of young mothers to return as quickly as possible. You saw 8 months is the average duration of a pregnancy. So there's a trend to go back here, but still at that time you cannot do everything. And that means to have a little bit less time pressure to really finish up certain stages of a project would also reduce some of the emotional pressure that we see that is affecting our female scientists here. And the clear heart project of mine is to change the attitude towards pregnancy, motherhood, and parenthood in general. You heard it repeatedly. So far, this is still seen as a problem, and a problem for everybody involved, right? I'm convinced that we can also improve there the general attitude, especially by supervisors and by the leadership personnel. As already mentioned, they are also overwhelmed with the situation, because let's face it, as a supervisor, as a group leader, you maybe have to face the situation once or twice in a decade. It's not that it happens every day. So you're not prepared for that. And I think we have to do a better job getting our people prepared for handling that, because it's the supervisor who is understood also very often as a sort of a mentor and problem solver. If this does not work out, this shakes up the whole situation between mentor and mentee, co-worker and supervisor. So I think here we have to empower and enhance the capabilities of our leadership personnel. So for me, it has become very clear there needs to be an aim to be more agile, more resilient, but also more empathic as a supervisor. How can we achieve that? I think it's also very important to tell to our leadership personnel that we expect them to work proactively. And their task is back on me. I have to better define the play field where the people can work. It's a little bit, let's go back to soccer, to the Champions League. I mean, there's the big play field, and if you take the attack on the right flank or on the left flank, the goal is shoot into the goal. Yeah? So I think we have to clearly define where autonomous activity by our leadership personnel is possible in the play field, and at the same time, we have to very clearly say, we have to score. This is the goal. This is where we have to get to. And the final consideration regarding the relevance of this initiative, if I may. I don't have any idea how I'm doing time-wise. For me, this is not limited only to pregnancy. It was mentioned already on some occasions, and I would really like to take up the ball here. We are facing an increasing need also for caretaking activities. Care work is by no means a private, it's a very individual matter, but it's not a private matter or a temporary phase. It is becoming a more fundamental part and situation of our society. We all have received care, right? We were all kids once. And many of us are currently involved in caregiving. I was also involved a couple of years ago. And almost everybody will probably have to rely on receiving care at a certain point in time, hopefully as late as possible. I think as a public university, it should become a real responsibility to reflect on this reality and in how far we are prepared, structure-wise and also culture-wise, to take up that responsibility. I think we have started to take up steps, and we had a very good talk before this meeting, Ute, very appreciative of that, where you specifically also mentioned that care is becoming an issue. And I think we should really take up that ball here at this point in time and also communicate that to our leadership personnel. I'm very convinced that we will have generally better leadership and performance when also empathy and experiences of such, and this is definitely not the right term, I'm a chemist, right? I'm not a social science person, but I call it a soft sector initiative, a soft sector impression and learning should become a complementary category in our leadership qualities. So, I'm almost at the end. From my point of view, there is indeed a lot that can be done. But it definitely requires continuous engagement by all, and by all willing to make the change. We have already heard about the vision process, and I would really like to emphasize that independently we had a very inspiring vision process within the faculty, and also at the university level there was the Future Fit campaign by the Rectorate, and we have independently identified individual performance and career opportunities as a major aspect for future improvements. I think it's important to not lose track of that we are playing on an international arena here and that we are in permanent competition. But on the other hand, I think it's really important that we allow the evolution and the empowerment of the potential that we have in our co-workers, independent of gender, but definitely sensitive to where it's not really properly developed at the moment. This is with female scientists. So I think we have achieved to push our faculty towards a player in the Champions League, coming back to that picture, in science, with several excellence initiatives. So now for me this time to consider an Excellence Initiative 2.0, focusing on empathic leadership and putting the individual scientist in focus in order to empower the existing potentials, along our new motto of the faculty, which you can see here, envisioning the future of chemistry together. Thank you very much.